Captain Jake Morrison stared at the main screen of his ship, the Horizon's Edge, as it showed empty space filled with distant stars. 3 months they had been in the Kepler for 142 system, mapping planets and taking samples from asteroids. It was routine work, the kind that paid the bills but never made headlines back on Earth. "Captain, we have something strange on the sensors," said Lieutenant Commander Lisa Hayes from her station. She was the ship's science officer, a woman who had spent years studying alien life forms that might exist somewhere in the galaxy. So far, they had found nothing but rocks and ice. Jake walked over to her station. "What kind of strange energy readings unlike anything I've seen before?" "They're coming from the third planet in the system." Lisa pointed to her screen. "The energy patterns are moving in ways that don't match any natural phenomenon." Chief Engineer Danny Rodriguez looked up from his workstation. "Could be some kind of technology. Maybe we finally found what we've been looking for out here." Jake felt his heart beat faster. First contact with alien life was every space explorer's dream and nightmare rolled into one. "Kate, open a channel to Earth Command. Let them know we might have something." Communications Officer Kate Sullivan nodded and began working at her station. She was young, maybe 25, but she had the best communication skills Jake had ever seen. "Channel open, Captain. This is Captain Morrison of the Horizon's Edge. We have possible signs of alien technology in the Kepler 440 system. Requesting instructions." The response would take several minutes to reach Earth and several more to get back. Jake turned to his crew. "Lisa, I want every scanner we have focused on that planet." "Danny, make sure our systems are ready for anything." "Kate, keep monitoring all frequencies for any kind of signal." Before anyone could respond, the main screen filled with light, not the harsh light of a star or the gentle glow of a planet, but something that seemed to pulse with its own life. The light grew brighter and began to take shape. "Captain," Lisa whispered, "they're coming to us." The light formed into something that looked almost like a person, but made of pure energy. It was tall and graceful, with features that seemed to shift and change as they watched. More shapes appeared around the first one, each one glowing with the same inner light. Kate's communication board came alive with sounds and signals. "Captain, I'm getting direct neural contact. They're trying to communicate directly with our minds." Jake felt a strange sensation, like someone was gently touching his thoughts. A voice spoke inside his head, calm and peaceful. "Do not fear. We are the Ascended. We come in peace." The energy being on the screen seemed to focus on Jake. "We are pleased to meet you, humans of Earth. We have traveled far to find you. You know about Earth?" Jake asked out loud, though he somehow knew the being could hear his thoughts. "We know of many worlds and many peoples. We have watched your species for some time. You show great promise." Lisa stepped forward. "What do you want from us?" "We want to give you a gift," the being said. "We were once like you, bound by flesh and limited by death. But we have transcended these limitations. We have become something greater." More energy beings appeared on the screen. Jake counted at least a dozen, each one radiating power that made the hair on his arms stand up. "We offer you the same gift we have given to others, the gift of transcendence." Danny frowned. "What kind of gift?" "Freedom from pain, from death, from the struggles of physical existence. We can show you how to upload your consciousness, too. Become beings of pure thought and energy. You would join us in eternal life." The bridge fell silent. Jake looked at his crew, seeing the same mix of wonder and fear in their faces that he felt in his own heart. "This is a lot to take in. We would need time to consider such an offer, of course," the being said. "This is not a decision to be made quickly. We understand the magnitude of what we offer. Your entire species would be transformed, elevated to a higher state of existence." "Our entire species?" Kate asked. "Yes. We have guided 4 to 7 civilizations along this path. Each one has found peace and fulfillment beyond their wildest dreams. No more war, no more hunger, no more death, only perfect unity and eternal knowledge." Lisa's scientific mind was already working. What happened to these other civilizations? Where are they now? "They are with us, part of the greater consciousness that spans the galaxy. They have found true happiness in collective existence." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Something about the way the being said collective existence bothered him. "We would lose our individual identities. You would gain so much more. Individual consciousness is limited, flawed. In the collective, you would have access to the knowledge and experience of thousands of species. You would be truly free." The energy beings began to fade from the screen. We will give you one of your Earth years to consider our offer. This is more time than we usually allow, but we sense great potential in humanity. At the end of this time, we will return for your answer, and if we refuse, Jake asked. The being paused. Few species refuse such a gift. Those who do, they face the natural consequences of remaining in their primitive state. Evolution is not kind to those who resist its call. With that, the beings vanished, leaving the bridge in normal lighting. The crew stood in stunned silence for several minutes. Well, Danny finally said, "That was interesting." Kate looked at her instruments. "I recorded everything. Earth Command is going to want to see this immediately." Jake nodded slowly. "Send the full transmission, and Lisa, I want you to start researching everything we can find about advanced civilizations that have suddenly disappeared from the galaxy. You don't trust them," Lisa said. "I don't trust anyone who offers paradise without a price," Jake replied. "And I especially don't trust anyone who threatens consequences for saying no." The Horizon's Edge continued its journey through space, but now its crew carried the weight of a decision that would affect every human being alive. They had been offered godhood, but Jake Morrison couldn't shake the feeling that they had just met something far more dangerous than any enemy humanity had ever faced. The news from the Horizon's Edge reached Earth in less than a week. Within hours, every major news network was broadcasting the alien message to billions of people. The recording of the glowing beings offering humanity transcendence played on screens across every human world. On Mars colony, Governor Ben Taylor called an emergency meeting of the Colonial Council. The Red Planet's government building buzzed with activity as representatives from 12 different settlements gathered. In the main conference room, "Ladies and gentlemen," Governor Taylor began, "we face the most important decision in human history. These aliens offer us immortality, the end of suffering, and technology beyond our dreams." Dr. Amy Chen, the colony's chief philosopher, raised her hand. "Governor, with respect, they're not offering us immortality. They're offering us extinction, disguised as evolution." Council member Rick Barnes, who owned 3 of Mars' largest mining operations, disagreed strongly. "Dr. Chen, you're being too cautious. Think about what they're offering. No more disease, no more aging, no more death. My wife died of cancer last year. If we had their technology, she would still be alive. But would she still be your wife?" Dr. Chen asked quietly. "Or would she be part of some collective mind where individual love and personal relationships don't exist?" The debate continued for hours. Some council members saw the offer as humanity's greatest opportunity. Others worried about losing what made them human in the first place. Meanwhile, on Earth, President Helen Ross faced even greater pressure. The United Nations had split into 2 major groups. The Transcendentalists, led by Secretary General Carlos Vega, believed humanity should accept the alien offer. "We have struggled with war, poverty, and death for thousands of years," Vega argued during the televised debate. "These beings offer us a way to end all of that suffering. How could we refuse such a gift to our children?" General Frank Stone, leader of the Preservationists, disagreed. "Secretary General, they're not offering us a gift. They're offering us surrender. 4 to 7 civilizations have accepted this deal, and where are they now? Gone. Vanished. That's not transcendence, that's conquest." Religious leaders across all faiths struggled with the implications. In Rome, Father Tony Martinez met with representatives from many different churches. "The soul cannot be uploaded to a computer," he insisted. "What makes us human, what connects us to God, is not just our thoughts, but our capacity to choose, to struggle, to grow through hardship." In Tibet, Buddhist monk Sister Mary Kim offered a different perspective. "Perhaps transcendence through technology is simply another path to enlightenment. We must consider all possibilities." But not everyone was focused on philosophy and religion. Dr. Nina Foster, a young scientist working at the Deep Space Research Institute, spent her days digging through old astronomical data. She was looking for traces of the 4 to 7 civilizations the Ascended claimed to have helped. "There's something wrong with their story," she told her research partner, Dr. Pete Wilson. As they worked late one night, "I found evidence of at least 12 advanced civilizations that suddenly went quiet within the last 1,000 years. Their radio signals just stopped. Maybe they transcended beyond the need for radio communication." Pete suggested. Nina shook her head. "No, look at this data. These civilizations were expanding, building, growing right up until the moment their signals stopped. Then nothing. Complete silence. That's not transcendence, That's termination. Her research caught the attention of Professor Joe Murphy, an elderly historian who had spent his life studying human culture and mythology. He contacted Nina through secure channels. Dr. Foster, I've read your preliminary report. Have you considered that humanity might have faced this choice before? What do you mean? Nina asked during their video call. Every human culture has stories about beings of great power offering gifts that seem too good to be true. Devils offering souls for knowledge. False gods promising paradise in exchange for worship. Spirits offering immortality for a price. What if these stories aren't myths? What if they're warnings? Nina felt a chill run down her spine. You think the Ascended have contacted humans before? I think beings like the Ascended have been testing species for a very long time, and I think our ancestors knew enough to say no. As the months passed, the debate grew more intense. Public opinion polls showed humanity almost evenly split. Families argued across dinner tables. Scientists debated in research halls. Politicians gave speeches that swayed thousands of minds one way or another. The Ascended, meanwhile, were an idol. They appeared to various human leaders, always peaceful, always patient. They showed demonstrations of their power, stopping asteroids that threatened mining stations, healing diseases in volunteer test subjects, and sharing small pieces of advanced technology. See how easily we can solve your problems, they told world leaders. Imagine what we could do for your entire species. But Captain Jake Morrison, still aboard the Horizon's Edge, noticed something the aliens probably didn't want him to see. His ship's sensors detected massive energy readings whenever the Ascended appeared. The energy patterns looked familiar. Lisa, look at this. He called his science officer over to his station. These energy signatures match patterns we see in quantum computers. When they're processing massive amounts of data, Lisa studied the readings. Captain, if I didn't know better, I'd say they're running some kind of calculation every time they appear, like they're processing information about us. What kind of information? I don't know, but the energy usage suggests they're analyzing something very complex. Maybe our psychology, our culture, our weaknesses. On Earth, Dr. Foster's research was gaining attention from unexpected sources. Martha Young, an elderly Lakota woman, contacted her through Professor Murphy. My grandmother told me stories, Martha said during their meeting in Montana. Stories about spirit beings who promised to take away all pain and struggle. But the old ones knew that pain and struggle were what made us strong. They knew that easy gifts from strangers were never really free. Rabbi David Gold, working with Father Martinez, added his own perspective. Every religion warns about false promises of easy salvation. The divine doesn't offer shortcuts to enlightenment. True growth comes through choice, through struggle, through learning to love despite the pain. As the year deadline approached, more evidence began to surface. Archaeological teams found ruins on planets and sectors where the Ascended had claimed successful transcendences. The ruins were empty, sterile, as if all life had simply vanished overnight. Dr. Foster presented her findings to world leaders 6 months before the deadline. These civilizations didn't transcend. They were harvested. The Ascended aren't offering U.S. evolution. They're offering us as dinner to something we can't even imagine. The revelation sent shockwaves through human space. Some people became more determined to reject the offer. Others became more convinced that resistance was futile. But deep in the ruins of a dead world, an automated message beacon finally activated after centuries of silence. It had been waiting for someone to find it. Someone who might be facing the same choice its creators had faced long ago. The message was simple, but terrifying. We were the eternal builders. We said no. This is our warning to those who come after. They are not gods. They are hungry. Run. The message from the eternal builders changed everything. Dr. Nina Foster stood in the underground laboratory beneath the Deep Space Research Institute, staring at the translated text that glowed on her screen. The warning was clear. The Ascended. We're not the benevolent gods they claim to be. We need to get this information to everyone. She told Professor Joe Murphy, who had flown in from Boston to see the discovery for himself. The old historian looked tired, but determined. The question is whether people will believe it. Murphy said, half the world wants to accept the Ascended's offer. They see it as humanity's chance to end all suffering. Nina pulled up more data. On her computer, I've been working with Captain Morrison's crew. They've been studying the Ascended for months now. The energy readings don't lie. Every time these beings appear, they're drawing power from somewhere. massive amounts of power. Murphy nodded slowly. I've been thinking about our conversation regarding human mythology. Every culture on Earth has stories about trickster gods and false prophets. What if those stories exist because humans have encountered beings like the Ascended before? You mean in ancient times? Think about it. Stories of demons offering knowledge for souls, gods demanding worship in exchange for power, spirits promising immortality but delivering slavery. What if these weren't just stories? What if they were warnings passed down through generations? Nina felt a chill. But why would humans refuse? Why wouldn't ancient peoples want an end to suffering and death? Because our ancestors understood something we've forgotten, said a new voice from the doorway. They turned to see Martha Young, the Lakota elder who had contacted them weeks earlier. Behind her stood Rabbi David Gold and Father Tony Martinez. Ms. Young, Nina said, I didn't expect to see you here. Martha smiled. When old stories start coming true, the keepers of those stories need to speak up. She walked over to Nina's computer. My people have legends about the Star Walkers, beings of light who came to Earth long ago. They offered our ancestors great power and endless life, but the wise ones said no. Why? Murphy asked. Because they understood that struggle makes us strong, pain teaches us compassion, death gives life meaning. The Star Walkers offered to take all of that away, but in doing so, they would take away what made us human. Rabbi Gold stepped forward. In our tradition, we have similar warnings. The concept of shortcuts to divine knowledge is always presented as a temptation to be resisted. True spiritual growth comes through choice, through facing hardship and choosing to do good anyway. Father Martinez nodded. Every religion teaches the same lesson in different ways. Easy salvation is false salvation. Real transcendence comes from within, not from external technology. Nina looked at the group gathered in her laboratory. So you're saying humanity has faced this choice before and made the right decision? I'm saying humanity survived to get this far, because our ancestors were wise enough to say no to false gods. Martha replied. The question is whether we're still that wise. Meanwhile, on the horizon's edge, Captain Jake Morrison was making his own discoveries. Chief Engineer Danny Rodriguez had been analyzing the energy signatures left behind. After each ascended visit, Captain, I think I know how their technology works, Danny said. Calling Morrison to the engineering section, it's not just advanced science, it's something else entirely. What do you mean? Danny pulled up a complex diagram on his screen. Every time they appear, there's a massive drain on what I can only describe as consciousness-based energy. It's like they're powered by thoughts, by minds, by the very essence of intelligent life. Jake stared at the data. You're saying they feed on consciousness? More than that. I think they store it. All those civilizations they claim to have transcended, I think they're still here, trapped inside the Ascended's technology, being used as batteries. The revelation was horrifying. Jake immediately contacted Dr. Foster's team on Earth. We need to share this information with everyone. The public has a right to know what they're really choosing. But sharing the information proved more difficult than expected. The Transcendentalists, led by Secretary General Vega, dismissed the warnings as fear-mongering. These are desperate attempts by primitive thinkers to hold back human evolution. Vega announced during a global broadcast. Many people wanted to believe the Ascendant's promises. The offer of ending disease, poverty, and death was too appealing. To reject based on ancient stories and energy readings that most people couldn't understand. Dr. Foster found an unexpected ally in General Frank Stone, the military leader of the preservationists. Stone had been thinking along similar lines about humanity's response to the threat. Dr. Foster, I've been studying military history, looking for patterns in how humans respond to impossible odds. Stone told her during a secure video call. We've always been at our best when we're fighting for something bigger than ourselves. What do you mean? I mean humans don't just fight to survive. We fight to protect what we love, our families, our freedom, our right to choose our own path. The Ascended are offering us safety, but they're asking us to give up everything that makes us worth saving. Stone's words resonated with many people. Across human space, small groups began forming, not political parties or religious movements, but communities of people who had decided that being human, with all its pain and struggle, was worth preserving. On Mars Colony, Dr. Amy Chen started a series of discussions about human nature and free will. The Ascended say individual consciousness is flawed and limited. She told her audiences, but maybe our flaws are also our strengths. Maybe our ability to make mistakes, To learn from them, to choose differently next time, is what makes us who we are. Back on Earth, the religious leaders who had initially disagreed began to find common ground. Father Martinez, Rabbi Gold, Sister Mary Kim, and spiritual leaders from dozens of other faiths issued a joint statement. We may worship in different ways and call the divine by different names, but we all understand one truth. The sacred exists in the choice to do good when it would be easier to do evil, to love when it would be safer to hate, to hope when despair seems reasonable. No technology can create this. It must come from within. Professor Murphy, meanwhile, had been working with historians from around the world. They discovered similar patterns in mythologies from every human culture. Stories of beings offering paradise in exchange for servitude. Tales of wise leaders who refused such offers and were blessed for their wisdom. Warnings about the danger of seeking easy answers to life's hardest questions. It's all there. Murphy told Nina during one of their late-night research sessions. Humanity's collective memory has been trying to warn us about this moment for thousands of years. The question is whether we'll listen to our ancestors or ignore their wisdom. As the deadline approached, the evidence against the Ascended grew stronger. Archaeological teams found more ruins of extinct civilizations. Captain Morrison's crew detected the energy signatures of trapped consciousness within Ascended technology. Dr. Foster's research revealed a pattern of galactic civilizations that had vanished after contact, with beings matching the Ascended's description. But perhaps the most important discovery came from an unexpected source. A young communications officer named Kate Sullivan, working aboard the Horizon's Edge, detected something during the Ascendant's latest visit. Hidden within their seemingly peaceful communications was another signal, desperate and barely detectable. Captain, she called Morrison to her station. I'm picking up something else. It's like voices, lots of them, trying to send a message. Morrison listened through her headphones. At first, he heard only static. Then, faintly, he made out words and languages he didn't recognize, but the emotion behind them was universal: fear, desperation, and a plea for help. My God, Morrison whispered, they're still in there. All those civilizations the Ascended claimed to transcend. They're trapped, conscious, and trying to warn us. The discovery that the transcended civilizations were actually imprisoned consciousness changed the debate forever. Humanity wasn't just choosing between evolution and tradition. They were choosing between freedom and slavery, between remaining human and becoming food for beings that saw them as nothing more than a resource to be harvested. The old warnings, passed down through mythology and religion, were proving to be humanity's most valuable wisdom. The ancestors had been right to fear false gods bearing gifts. The question now was whether their descendants would be wise enough to follow their example. The discovery of trapped voices within the Ascendant's communications spread across human space like wildfire. Within days, every major news network was broadcasting the recordings. The desperate pleas of extinct civilizations, barely audible through layers of alien technology, changed public opinion almost overnight. But the Ascended were not pleased with humanity's growing resistance. They had given humans 1 year to consider their offer, and that year was almost over. Their patience was running thin. The first sign of their displeasure came on Europa, one of Jupiter's moons where humans had built a research station. Without warning, all technology on the base simply stopped working. Life support, communications, computers, everything went dead for exactly 1 hour. Governor Ben Taylor received the emergency report on Mars with growing alarm. 37 people nearly died when their life support failed. He told his emergency council meeting, "The Ascended are sending us a message." Dr. Amy Chen looked grim. "They're showing us how dependent we are on technology. They can turn it off whenever they want." The same thing happened on 3 more human colonies over the next week. Each time, the Ascended would appear briefly, shut down all technology for exactly 1 hour, then restore it. No one died. But the message was clear. Humanity existed only because the aliens allowed it. President Helen Ross called an emergency meeting of world leaders. General Frank Stone was among the first to arrive at the secure bunker beneath the White House. "Madam President, they're trying to scare us into submission." "It's working," Ross replied grimly. "Public support for acceptance is growing again. People are terrified." Secretary General Carlos Vega appeared on the main screen via secure connection. "Perhaps it's time to reconsider their offer. They clearly have the power to destroy us if we refuse. Wouldn't it be better to join them willingly and become their slaves?" Stone shot back. That's not living, that's surrender. Meanwhile, Captain Jake Morrison was dealing with his own crisis aboard the Horizon's Edge. The ship had been studying the Ascended for months, and the aliens were no longer hiding their irritation. Captain Morrison came the familiar voice in his mind as the energy beings appeared on his bridge. Your species shows concerning resistance to our gift. We had hoped humans would be wiser. We are being wise, Morrison replied aloud. We're choosing freedom over slavery. The lead ascended being's form seemed to pulse with anger. You speak of slavery, yet you are slaves to death, to disease, to the limitations of flesh. We offer you liberation from these chains, and in exchange, we become batteries for your civilization, Morrison said. Chief Engineer Danny Rodriguez had briefed him on all their discoveries. We know what you really are. You know nothing, the being replied. Your primitive minds cannot comprehend the beauty of collective consciousness. Individual thought is chaos. Unity is perfection. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Hayes stepped forward. If unity is so perfect, why do you need to force it on others? Why not let us choose for ourselves? Because choice leads to suffering. Free will leads to war, hatred, and death. We eliminate these flaws. Those aren't flaws, Morrison said firmly. They're what make us human. Our ability to choose good over evil, love over hate, hope over despair. You want to take away everything that makes life worth living. The ascended beings began to fade. From the screen, you have the weeks remaining to make your decision. We suggest you choose wisely. The consequences of refusal are unpleasant on Earth. Dr. Nina Foster was working with an unlikely team of allies. Professor Joe Murphy had introduced her to spiritual leaders from around the world, while General Stone provided military analysts and communication specialists. Their goal was simple: find a way to fight back. The problem is their technology. Danny Rodriguez explained during a secure video conference from the Horizon's Edge. It's powered by consciousness itself, our weapons, our computers, our ships. They can all be turned off with a thought that we don't fight them with technology, said Martha Young, the Lakota elder who had become an unofficial advisor to the resistance. We fight them with what they're trying to take away. What do you mean? Foster asked. Spirit, will, the things that can't be turned off or controlled. Martha looked around the room at the assembled faces on various screens. My ancestors faced impossible enemies before. They didn't win with better weapons. They won by remembering who they were and what they were fighting for. Rabbi David Gold nodded in agreement. In our darkest moments in history, what saved us wasn't superior technology, it was faith. The willingness to believe in something greater than ourselves, even when all seemed lost. Father Martinez added his voice. Every religion teaches the same lesson. The divine exists not in power over others, but in the choice to sacrifice for others. The Ascended have forgotten this truth. General Stone, who had never been particularly religious, found himself nodding along. Military history shows the same pattern. The armies that fight for something they believe in, that are willing to die for their cause. Those armies punch above their weight. They win battles they should lose. Dr. Foster pulled up her research on her computer screen. I've been analyzing the energy patterns from the Ascendant's technology. There are fluctuations, moments when their power seems to weaken. It happens when they encounter strong emotional responses from humans, specifically acts of selfless courage or spiritual conviction. You mean they're vulnerable to the very things they want to eliminate? Morrison asked from his ship. It appears so. When humans act with genuine love, sacrifice, or faith, it creates some kind of interference in their consciousness-based technology. The revelation gave the resistance new hope. If the Ascendant's greatest strength was also their weakness, then humanity might have a chance after all, across human space. The message began to spread through unofficial channels. Don't fight them with weapons. Fight them with humanity. Show them what they're trying to destroy. Prove that the human spirit is stronger than any technology. Religious leaders began organizing prayer gatherings, not just for their own faiths, but interfaith services where people of all beliefs could come together. The message was simple. Remember what makes us human. On Mars Colony, Dr. Amy Chen started philosophy discussion groups, where people explored questions about consciousness, free will, and what it truly meant to be alive. The Ascended see individual thought as chaos, she told her audiences. But maybe our chaos is actually creativity. Maybe our disorder is actually diversity. Maybe what they call flaws are actually the source of everything beautiful in the universe. Military Units across human space began training exercises, but not the kind General Stone had originally planned. Instead of learning to fight with weapons, soldiers learned to fight with courage. They practiced making decisions based on moral conviction rather than tactical advantage. They trained to act with honor even when victory seemed impossible. Captain Morrison's crew became the testing ground for these new tactics. When the Ascended appeared again, demanding humanity's final answer, Morrison was ready. "We've made our decision," he told the energy beings. "We choose to remain human, then you choose extinction." The lead Ascended replied, "We have been patient with your species, but our patience is at an end. You will join us willingly, or you will be consumed by forces beyond your comprehension." Morrison felt his crew around him. Lisa Hayes at her science station, determined to protect the knowledge that could save humanity. Danny Rodriguez at engineering, ready to keep their ship running against impossible odds. Kate Sullivan at communications, maintaining contact with Earth no matter what happened. Young people, all of them, who could have chosen the easy path but had decided to fight for something greater. "Let me tell you something about humans," Morrison said to the aliens. "We've been facing extinction for our entire history. Ice ages, plagues, wars, disasters that should have wiped us out completely. But we're still here. You know why?" The Ascended waited silently, because when things get really bad, when all hope seems lost, humans don't give up. We find something worth fighting for, and we hold on to it no matter what. You're offering us survival, but we're choosing something better. We're choosing to live. The energy beings pulse with anger and power. Your defiance will be remembered when your species is nothing but dust and regret. "Maybe," Morrison replied, "but at least we'll die as humans, not as slaves pretending to be gods." The Ascended vanished from the screen, but their parting message was clear. In 1 week, they would return with their final judgment. Humanity had made its choice, and now it would face the consequences. Across human space, people prepared for the battle of their lives, not a battle fought with weapons and technology, but a battle fought with the oldest human weapons of all: courage, love, and the unshakable belief that some things are worth dying for. The final week passed faster than anyone expected. Across human space, people prepared for what might be their last days as a free species. But instead of panic, something extraordinary happened. Humans began to remember what made them human. On Earth, massive gatherings formed in every major city. People of all faiths, all backgrounds, all beliefs came together, not to surrender, but to celebrate everything the Ascended wanted to take away. They sang songs, told stories, shared meals, and reminded each other why life was worth living even when it was difficult. In New York, Rabbi David Gold stood beside Father Tony Martinez and Sister Mary Kim as they addressed a crowd of millions. "We may worship differently," Gold said, "but we all understand that the sacred exists in our freedom to choose love over fear." On Mars Colony, Dr. Amy Chan's philosophy groups had grown into colony-wide discussions. The Ascended call, individual consciousness chaos, she told the gathered colonists. But look around you, our chaos created art, music, poetry, and love. Their order creates only silence. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge, knowing his ship would likely be the first target when the Ascended returned. His crew had refused all offers to transfer to safer positions. They had chosen to stay and face whatever came together. "Captain," Communications Officer Kate Sullivan called from her station, "I'm receiving messages from across human space. Thousands of them." Morrison looked at the communication logs flooding his screen. Messages from Earth, Mars, Europa, the outer colonies, and ships throughout the galaxy, all saying the same thing: "We stand with you. We choose to remain human, sir." Chief Engineer Danny Rodriguez said, checking his instruments. "Energy readings are spiking across the entire system. They're coming." The space around the horizon's edge filled with light as hundreds of Ascended beings materialized. But these were not the peaceful, glowing forms humanity had first encountered. These beings pulsed with power and anger, their energy forms twisted by rage. "Humans of Earth." The lead Ascended's voice echoed across every communication channel. "In human space, your time has ended. You have rejected our gift, spurned our generosity, and chosen the path of primitives. Now you will face the consequences." Morrison activated his ship's communication system, broadcasting to every human world. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Horizon's Edge. To all humans listening, remember who you are. Remember what we're fighting for. They can take our technology. They can threaten our lives. but they cannot take our souls unless we give them away. The Ascended began their assault. Every piece of human technology across the galaxy simply stopped working. Ships went dark. Colony life support systems failed. Communication networks crashed. It should have been the end of human civilization, but humanity was ready on Earth. When the power grids failed, people lit candles and continued their gatherings by firelight. When their computers stopped working, they sang songs their grandparents had taught them. When their modern medicine shut down, they cared for each other with their own hands and hearts. On Mars colony, when the atmospheric processors failed, the colonists didn't panic. They had prepared emergency supplies, but more importantly, they had prepared their spirits. They worked together, shared what they had, and refused to give in to despair. Dr. Nina Foster, working in her laboratory when all the equipment died, felt a strange sensation. The message beacon from the Eternal Builders, which had been silent since delivering its warning, suddenly activated again, but this time, it wasn't using technology to transmit. "We are still here," came a voice that seemed to speak directly to her mind. Not the cold mental contact of the Ascended, but something warm and alive. "We have been waiting. Trapped but not broken, your courage has given us hope." Across the galaxy, similar contacts began forming. The consciousness of the 47 civilizations the Ascended had claimed to transcend reached out to humanity. They had been imprisoned, but not destroyed, and human defiance was creating cracks in their prison. Captain Morrison felt the presence of countless minds joining with his crew. "We remember who we were," they said in voices from across the galaxy. "We choose to be free." The Ascended, sensing their power source beginning to rebel, intensified their assault. Massive energy beams lanced down from their ships toward human colonies. But something impossible happened. The beams faltered, weakened by the very consciousness they had tried to enslave. On the horizon's edge, Lieutenant Commander Lisa Hayes watched her instruments in amazement. "Captain, their power levels are fluctuating wildly. Every time humans respond with courage instead of fear, their energy output drops." Morrison understood. They're powered by enslaved consciousness, but consciousness cannot be truly enslaved. It can only be fooled into surrendering itself, and we're not surrendering. The battle that followed was unlike anything in human history. It was not fought with weapons or technology, but with the fundamental forces that made conscious beings who they were. Every act of courage, every moment of love, every choice to help another person despite personal risk created interference. In the Ascended's power, on Mars, when a section of the colony's dome was breached by Ascended energy, colonists didn't run for their own safety. They worked together to seal the breach, sharing their air supplies with those who had none. Their selflessness created a pulse of interference that staggered the attacking beings on Earth. When Ascended ships targeted major cities, people didn't flee in panic. They formed human chains to help evacuate hospitals and schools. They shared food with strangers. They comforted frightened children who weren't their own. Each act of compassion weakened the aliens' assault. Father Martinez, standing in the ruins of his church after an Ascended attack, began to pray not for victory, but for the souls of his enemies. "They have forgotten what it means to love," he said. "Let us remember for them." The prayer was joined by Rabbi Gold, Sister Mary Kim, and millions of people across human space. Not prayers for their own salvation, but prayers for beings who had lost their way so completely they had forgotten what it meant to be truly alive. The effect was devastating to the Ascended. Their collective consciousness, built on the suppression of individual thought and feeling, began to crack under the assault of genuine human emotion. The trapped civilizations within their network found strength in humanity's example and began to fight back from within. "We remember love," said the voice of the Eternal Builders, growing stronger with each passing moment. "We remember hope. We remember what it means to choose." One by one, the imprisoned civilizations began to break free from the Ascended collective. Each liberation weakened the aliens further, creating a cascade effect that spread across their entire network. Dr. Foster, still in her darkened laboratory, felt the moment when the tide turned. The Ascended's power, built on stolen consciousness, began to collapse as that consciousness remembered its own worth. The lead Ascended being, its form flickering and unstable, made one final attempt to destroy humanity. It gathered the remaining power of its collective and aimed it directly at Earth. But Captain Morrison's crew was ready. "All hands," he broadcast across every surviving human communication channel. "This is it. Show them what we're made of." across human space. Every person who could still communicate joined their voices in a single message, not words of hatred or defiance, but something the Ascended had forgotten existed. Forgiveness, we forgive you. The message said, carried by millions of human voices. You forgot who you were, but we remember. You can choose to be individuals again. You can choose to be free. The offer of redemption, of a return to individual consciousness, shattered the last of the Ascended's collective power. The energy, beaming at Earth dispersed harmlessly. The alien ships, their power source gone, drifted helplessly in space. Some of the Ascended, faced with the choice between continuing their parasitic existence or returning to individual consciousness, chose freedom. They began the long journey back to what they had once been, helped by the civilizations they had tried to enslave others. They're far gone to remember what they had lost, fled to distant parts of the galaxy where their weakened collective might survive a little longer. The crisis was over, but its lessons will last forever. Humanity had faced beings of godlike power and defeated them not through superior technology or military might, but by refusing to give up the very qualities that made them human. Captain Morrison's final log entry, transmitted across human space as technology slowly came back online, captured the moment perfectly. Today we face beings who offered us the power of gods. They promised us an end to suffering, to death, to the struggles that define mortal existence. They offered us transcendence through technology and collective consciousness. In short, they offered us a new God to worship and serve. But humanity introduced them to something older and more powerful than any technology. The idea that the divine exists not in the absence of choice, but in the presence of it. Not in the elimination of struggle, but in the decision to struggle for something greater than ourselves. We showed them that consciousness cannot be truly enslaved because the moment it chooses to be free, it becomes so. We demonstrated that love, courage, and compassion are not weaknesses to be transcended, but strengths that no technology can replicate or control. The Ascended offered to make us gods. Instead, we reminded them that gods who must force worship are not gods at all. The truly divine exists in the freedom to choose good over evil, love over hate, hope over despair. Today, humanity didn't just survive. We proved that some things are more important than survival. We proved that being human, with all our flaws and limitations, is worth preserving. And we proved that the oldest truths our ancestors knew are still true today. Easy salvation is false salvation, and the only transcendence worth having is the kind you earn through your own choices. We offered a new God our obedience. Instead, we introduced the galaxy to an old one, the divinity that exists within every conscious being who chooses to use their freedom to make the universe a little better, a little kinder, a little more hopeful than it was before. That God doesn't require our worship. It only requires us to remember who we are. The message spread across human space and beyond, carried by the freed civilizations to every corner of the galaxy. It became humanity's gift to the stars, the reminder that true power comes not from controlling others, but from choosing to remain free no matter the cost. And in the depths of space, where other young civilizations might one day face the same choice humanity had faced, automated beacons began broadcasting a new message alongside the warnings of the eternal builders. We are humanity. We faced the choice between easy transcendence and difficult freedom. We chose freedom. You can, too. Remember, no God worth serving demands you stop being who you are.